Hello everyone, welcome to Fact Friday. I'm Martin Padilla. On this edition of Fact Friday, we're going to be talking about the census. The census is a 10-year survey designed to help update the population so we can properly assign congressional representation and resources for our community. Here to tell us on why it's important to take the census and how to submit this form is Elizabeth O'Hara. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell us more about what the census is?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth O'Hara. I'm one of the co-chairs of this year's Paso del Norte Complete Count Committee. And I'm out here to talk with you a little bit about the 2020 census. And what the census is, it is a determination of who is in the boundaries of the United States at a particular point in time. Not who is a resident of the area. It is literally who is within the confines of the country. And the reason that we do that is that a lot of the funding that is given to things like the hospital, to local food banks, for transportation, for medicines, for schools, is population based. Now, if you're from El Paso and you've been here for a while, you know that El Paso has grown. We have Northeast El Paso now and Far East El Paso, where East El Paso and Horizon City are now butting up against each other in a way that 10 years ago wasn't the case. So we know that our population data has changed. What we need to determine is how much. And so it's really important for people in El Paso to participate in the census so that the proper funding goes to things like our school district, to transportation, and to local hospitals.
Does everyone need to take the census?
There are a lot of funding mechanisms that are used for schools, for hospitals, for transportation, food bank, and it's all population based. And so in the case of El Paso, 10 years ago when the census got underway, only 70% approximately of El Pasoans were counted. And so what that means is, let's say you run a clinic and you were going to treat 100 people, you only have funding based on 70 of those people. It doesn't mean that there's not a need, it means you don't have the money to meet that need. And so in this case, the census is incredibly important for us because we need to make sure that El Paso gets all of the funding that it needs for a lot of the critical infrastructure that is population based.
There have been concerns regarding citizenship questions. Can you expand on this concern and what people should know?
A lot of people in El Paso would have heard this bubbling up in 2019 as there was a lot of political conversation about whether there would be a citizenship question attached to the questionnaire. And if those questionnaires can be used by agencies that would be able to potentially determine where the applicant lives. It's really important for people to understand that these are not shared, that these are protected data, and that it does not matter what your immigration status is. We need to know that you're living in El Paso so that we can make sure that the infrastructures that you use are well funded. And so I cannot stress that enough. Immigration status is not a question on the census, and these census questionnaires are not turned over to other agencies that are used for enforcement of our immigration policy. These are two different things. We literally just need to know who is here.
How does this benefit our community in El Paso?
You know, a lot of us have been watching the news, obviously, and we've seen that there are agencies in El Paso that are really just getting hammered as a result of the crisis. And I'll give you a good example. The El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank is dependent on the census because the agencies that they use to bring in food do so based on population numbers. If it's not well funded and a crisis hits, you will see what we are seeing today, and that is that the El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank are now relying more on donations than its legitimate funding. We need to make sure that we are participating in the census so that we can make sure that agencies like the food bank are properly funded. Another good example of that would be our schools. You know that when the crisis hit, a lot of kids were forced to then do digital learning and distance learning. But not all of the schools were able to provide the laptops or the MiFis so that kids would be able to continue with their studies. That is population based. The funding for those things are population based. So if we're really upset about what is happening with regards to distance learning, with regards to what's happening at our food bank, making sure that our first frontline responders at the hospitals have the equipment that they need, the medicines they need when something happens, you can determine that by participating in the census.
What changes have we seen from the last census to this census?
Well, I'll give you a good example of some of the things that have changed in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we really didn't use the phrase Northwest El Paso. There happened to be the outlet shops and then New Mexico. There really wasn't a lot going on out there. Now we know we have schools out there. We have the new Hospitals of Providence that is out there. We have whole areas that are legitimately not on the books because those things happened after 2010, excuse me. So we also have the same issue in Far East El Paso. The banks, the stores, the hospitals, the neighborhoods, the schools, none of that exists on paper because that's all new development. So we need to make sure that the people that have moved here, that have started these businesses, that are a part of these populations, that they're counted. We need to make sure that these businesses are well supported. And we as consumers, we as people in our community can do that by making sure that we get counted.
Due to the current COVID-19 situation, how can people submit a census form?
It has never been easier to participate in the census, and that's because you can do it online. This is the first time that's ever happened. So it used to be that you would receive a census in the mail, you would fill it out, and you would send it in regular mail. That's still an option, but you can also call and participate that way. You can also go online, register up. It's going to ask you about 10 questions, and these are going to be things like, how do you identify as your nationality? How many people live in your home? What are the ages of the people that are in your home? So for instance, if you're like into Ancestry.com, those of you who have participated in something like that and can look at the last 10 years of census data, you'll be able to see that somebody may have recognized themselves back in the 1940s as a homemaker, and somebody worked at, I don't know, like the railroad, something like that. So you'll be able to determine, kind of how you're recognized, because it'll ask you about your employment as well.
Is the form in English and Spanish?
It's actually in about 14 different languages, and so of course in our area it's primarily going to be English and Spanish. And so as soon as you land on that page or you have the actual questionnaire, you can choose your language, and then every question on that questionnaire is going to be in your preferred language.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
One of the things the Complete Count Committee would really like to encourage is for local businesses to step in and help to fund the CCC. Those dollars right now would be used as part of our digital outreach, where we are targeting cell phones in English and Spanish, primarily Spanish however, in a lot of the tracts where we're starting to see some issues. Again, this is going to be South Central El Paso, South El Paso, Far Northeast El Paso, Far East El Paso. We would really like the opportunity to work with the business community in our philanthropic area so that we can make sure that we actually are, when we're doing our geo-fencing of these phones and getting people to participate, that we're well funded. This effort is going to continue until October. And so we're, right in the middle of summer at this point. And so we would really like to have the support of El Paso businesses that also are a recipient of funds that come as a result of this population-based questionnaire. I think there are a couple of things that are really important about the census. This takes literally less than 10 minutes, particularly if you do it digitally. So we want you to know that that is probably the easiest, fastest way for you to do this. You are giving more information when you apply for a credit card, let's say, or you're signing up for a website than what you are on the census. So I think that's really important. We also have some challenges in El Paso that continue, and that's because a lot of people haven't really made the connection as to, well, it doesn't affect me. Well, if you're going to the schools, if you're going to the local hospital, if you're driving on our roads, you absolutely are benefiting from others who have participated in the census. And so that's an important thing as well. The other thing, and this is really important right now, we only have until October to get everybody counted. And right now, El Paso, the city of El Paso, the county of El Paso is hovering right at about 60% participation. That's not going to cut it for us. That means only 6 in 10 El Pasoans have participated. We would only get funding for 6 in 10. We are seeing large swaths of Northeast El Paso, Far East El Paso, the Jefferson High School area, the Segundo Barrio. We need to see these neighborhoods start to really participate. If we can get those areas as well as Fort Bliss, this is a really important part for us. Fort Bliss soldiers have to participate, their families as well, because they are the city within our city. and yet still can use many of the structures that we use. We need to get as much funding in there. The goal for the Complete Count Committee is to get to at least 82%. So we still have a little ways to go. To get people to participate in things like that, you've seen some of the challenges where the neighborhood associations are challenging each other. We've had the schools challenge one another, so you'll see like out in the Cañutillo area, you've seen where one middle school is challenging the participants of another middle school, really trying to get this going. And the reason for that is, if you have a child right now, let's say you have a 5-year-old in 2020, and you don't participate, that kid isn't counted until they're 15. We have missed their entire childhood when it comes to any medical care that they might have needed and any educational services that they might have needed. And that's a shame. You know, in El Paso, we spend a lot of time feeling a little, I'll use a census word, discounted from the state of Texas because we're so far away from some of the other metropolitan areas and we're kind of out on our own. This is an opportunity for us to take command of our own future. This doesn't have anything to do with anybody in Washington, D.C. This doesn't have anything to do with anybody in Austin. This is on us, and it's really important that El Pasoans participate.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Remember that the census deadline is in October. If you need any more information regarding the census, please visit 2020census.gov. If you need any information regarding COVID-19, visit our social media sites or visit epstrong.org. Stay safe, El Paso. We'll see you guys on the next Fact Friday.